Hello, my name is Taylor Pettis and welcome to today's presentation, Next Level SEO, Optimizing Strategy and Content. They say that the key to a successful business is location, location, location. In the world of digital marketing, the best location is on the first page of the Google search results. Today's presentation is designed to help you take your organic traffic to the next level and hopefully land this prime digital real estate. And we'll get this from Chrissy Reamer, an SEO strategist at 3 Deep Marketing. But before I introduce Chrissy, I want to cover just a few housekeeping items. First of all, we hope the presentation will be both informative and interactive. To help make this interactive, please share your comments and questions in the chat area of the webinar screen. I'll also do my best to help Chrissy answer your questions during the presentation, so keep them coming. The next item is we are recording today's webinar, and all of you will be emailed a copy following the event. So if you like what you see and want to share some of your cool new knowledge with your connections, please feel free to do so. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Chrissy Reamer. Chrissy is an SEO strategist at 3 Deep Marketing, a digital agency in St. Paul, Minnesota. She has both in-house and agency SEO experience and is passionate about great content. Chrissy also speaks at various SEO conferences, and she's fresh back from MozCon in Seattle, where she shared her passion for volunteer work and SEO. Now, here's Chrissy.
Chrissy Reimer, and I'm an SEO specialist here at 3 Deep. So this is the SEO Pyramid. If you attended SEO 101, you are familiar with what this image looks like. So if you did not have a chance to attend the SEO 101, we have recorded that, and that is available and accessible on our blog. So definitely check it out. Nate handled that one, and he did a great job handling it. This information today will still be relevant, though, if you did not attend that first webinar. So today, we are moving on up the pyramid to the optimization section. And that is going to cover content marketing and content strategy. And this really is to ensure that the content on your website is relevant and useful to your users. So once you've really built that foundational level and have those foundational elements put in place and that technical and structural foundation there, then once that is good to go, then you want to create great content that users will consume on your website. So again, just to kind of drive it forward, content strategy. So this is going to be the data-driven content creation, and then content marketing is getting people to see your content. So we are going to cover this today. But I've already probably said content like 15 times, so let's define what is content, just so we're all on the same page. Content is really anything that a user consumes on your website. So whether this is a really cool graphic or some kind of informational chart, perhaps a video, even an FAQ page, also, just a blog post or a product page, all of these are content that lives on your site. So again, it's anything that the user is going to consume on your website. And is content worth the investment? It's really easy to push content aside. It's a little bit trickier to prove the ROI of content. But if I were to say no, you could all hop off the call at this point. So of course, content is worth the investment. I pulled an example here. So 3 Deep is located in Minnesota. So this website here is a company that's located near the Boundary Waters, which is a beautiful area to camp in, kayak and canoe in northern Minnesota. So this particular website, they're an outfitter for camping trips, and they're probably pretty comparable. They're a smaller site, even though 410 URLs looks like a lot. It is a smaller site. So they have 410 URLs indexed. Out of those URLs, they are ranking for 320 keywords, which has an estimated monthly traffic of about 4,700 and an estimated monthly traffic cost of 2,000. This estimated monthly traffic is estimated based on the keywords that they have ranking and the average monthly search volume for those keywords. It's an estimation based on that. If that all sounded very foreign to you, don't worry, we will cover this a little bit later. And then the estimated monthly traffic cost is based on if you were to pay for those terms that they're ranking for in PPC ads, pay-per-click ads. So, okay, so this is an example of one website, but let's just take a look at one single page. So this is one piece of content that lives on this website. It's a piece of evergreen content, which means it does not need to constantly be updated and it is always relevant. So this is one URL. It has 12 keywords ranking. It has an estimated monthly traffic of 23, which isn't a ton necessarily, but the estimated monthly traffic cost for those terms that it's ranking for is $37, which doesn't seem like a ton, but if you factor in that is a monthly cost, and so if you were to multiply that by 12, that's almost $450 a year. I doubt it cost them that much to create this piece of content, so it'll quickly pay for itself. Plus, it's useful to the user, so you can, in theory, tie some ROI back to content creation. So yes, content is worth it. Okay, so today you are going to learn basic website organization, keyword research, how to do it and how to apply it, and then also some content marketing, content strategy, and content promotion. So we will just go ahead and get started with basic website organization. Let's take a trip back to high school biology. We all remember how the animal kingdom is broken down. So you start from the top with this really broad grouping where all of these things have something in common, but it's pretty broad. And then you break it down more and more specific. You categorize things into groupings that have similarities but are not exactly like, and then all the way down to the specific animal. So that is how you should organize your website. That is the best way to organize your website, is to establish that hierarchy. So starting with your home page, which really encompasses a pretty broad topic, and then focus down and categorize how your website is broken down until finally you get down to those product or service pages. So an example of what this looks like practically, looking at that same website we were just looking at. So you start with their home page, go down to their secondary navigation. Within their secondary navigation, they have tertiary navigation. Then it goes to a product category page, and then down to a product detail page. So just a few more examples, just to see how different people organize their website. So this is REI. Obviously, they are a huge, huge website, but they have broken it down pretty well. So you have like the Shop REI outlet. They have, so they have 7 options. You want to keep your secondary navigation options between 5 and 7. This is a good way to guide users throughout your website. So the easier you can make it for them to get to the places that they need to get to, the better. So again, this is that same website. So they really only have 4 options. The home page doesn't really count necessarily. So they have 4 options here. Pretty well organized, clear to follow, easy to follow. This is another option. They have, I would say, almost too many options, but it is pretty well organized here and easy to understand. So, okay, once you have decided how you want your website hierarchy, what you want it to look like, what your most important pages are, all the way down to the specific pages. And this example is, an e-commerce example. This is still relevant with services or whatever you're offering, even if it's like blog posts or articles or something. You still want this structure to be similar. Okay, so once you've established that hierarchy, next, this is really important, is building a URL and URL structure. So when you're building URLs and building a URL structure, you want to make sure that it's human readable, that it's concise, that it has lowercase or consistent capitalization, that trailing slashes are consistent, and use dashes, not underscores. This seems probably not that clear, but let's just go ahead and build a URL and it'll become very clear. So you start with this main root domain here, so this will get you to the home page. Then you want to go one level deeper, let's say, and you want to build a canoe and kayak page. So you add this section here, which gets you to this canoe and kayak page. Then so let's focus on canoes. So you want to build these product category pages. So you would add this specific brand or type, which would get you to that specific brand or type product category page. And then to the specific product page, add that specific product name. As you can see, I use dashes between the words instead of underscores, so that is what that was referring to. And then this is what that full URL looks like. So as you can see, each section of that URL indicates a level of the site and really creates a breadcrumb of how that user got to that specific page. It's human readable, so they can understand I was just at the Winona page, which brought me to the Boundary Waters 17-foot canoe. Yeah, so URLs can help also indicate that hierarchy on your website. So once you've established your hierarchy, you have your URLs, let's talk about internal linking. So internal linking is really important on your website. The reason that it is, it creates a path for users to follow, and it also helps search engines find your pages. Search engines find pages via links, so if you do not link to a page, the search engine cannot find it. And if you're creating great content, you want to make sure that the search engine can access it. So let's just go to this next page, which has an example here of really what we're talking about here. So you want to make sure that you're linking strategically to indicate which pages are the most important. So deeper pages should link back to the previous level and so on until the home page. The home page will typically have the most internal links to it because it's typically the most important page on your website. So you want to make sure that you are linking consistently. This is a big problem that we run into very often, and we have to go back in and clean up, and it is not fun to clean up. So go into linking with this in mind, that you should link consistently. And what does that mean? This means that, so this page, this screenshot that I have here, is on REI's website, and I clicked through to the Camp and Hike page, and then this is that drop-down menu, the top section is. So if you look under backpacks and you go to backpacking packs, you want to make sure that both of those URLs are consistent, that they are using the same capitalization, the same trailing slashes, like letter for letter, you want to make sure it's the same. And the reason that that's so important is that if you are not linking consistently, you are really splitting equity across multiple pages. And equity is, it helps search engines determine which page is most important and authoritative on your site for a particular topic. So, so it can get a little bit tricky. So you just want to make sure that you're linking consistently so that if somebody externally is linking to that page, that they are passing equity to the correct page instead of, again, splitting it across multiples. It just dilutes the equity unnecessarily. Okay, whew, wow, we flew through that. So, basic website organization. It's really important that you are just creating that path for users to follow, and also for search engines to follow, and just indicating what is the most important on your website. So now that we've established that, let's talk about creating the actual content that lives on your website and how to find the data to support what type of content you want to create. So keyword research. This is like the bread and butter of being an SEO. Once you figure this out, you can tell all your friends you know how to do SEO. That's not true, but this is very important. There are multiple keyword research tools. Bing has a keyword research tool. You can use Google Trends. You can use Ubersuggest, SEMrush. If you do any kind of Google search for how to do keyword research or keyword research tools, you will get a plethora of options. But my tool of choice is the Google AdWords Keyword Planner. So today we are going to walk through how to do keyword research using the Google AdWords Keyword Planner. So step one, you sign up or you sign in. If you already have a Google AdWords account, just go ahead and sign in. If you don't sign up, it's a free account. You may have to put in your credit card information. I haven't signed up recently, so I can't verify that, but you don't have to. It won't charge you anything unless you decide to start doing PPC ads. So once you've signed up or signed in, you'll get to this page. Go ahead and click on Find New Keywords, which will bring you to this next page, or it'll drop down to this page. Enter a term that you want to target. Depending on what type of keyword research, depends on what term you want to target here, but if you're just doing some generic keyword research to get some general ideas, just go ahead and put in something broad. You want to make sure that you are targeting correctly. Typically, it'll just default as United States in all languages, but if you do have something more specific, or if you're like a locally based company and you want to know, specifically in Minnesota or wherever you're from, you can update those. And then go ahead and click on Get Ideas, which will bring you to this page. Once you get on this page, it will default to this first tab here, but just go ahead and click on the second tab. For the purpose of keyword research, the second tab is more useful. Okay, so it'll pull up that specific term that you searched for in addition to relevant terms below. So you want to select a few keywords to target based on relevancy and average monthly search volume. So that is like the, logistically how to do this, but let's talk about kind of more of the art and science behind keyword research. In selecting the right keywords, so this graph on the right here shows it shows the example of like long tail versus fat head or short tail keywords. So a long tail keyword would be something like adult purple sleeping bag. There's kind of a lot of words there. It's a very specific search. It probably doesn't have very high search volume, but it also has lower competition. So if you are the right person for that term, that is a better term to target versus like sleeping bags, which probably has very high search volume, but also is a highly competitive term. So you want to consider when you're doing your keyword research and deciding which terms to target, you want to make sure that you're considering how relevant the term is, the average monthly search volume. If nobody's searching for it, then don't necessarily target that term, but you also don't want to target something that has a million searches if you are a locally based anything. And then the competition level for those terms. And something to note if you're kind of new to the game, both SEMrush and Moz, they both have keyword difficulty tools. So if you search for a keyword difficulty tool, it'll likely pop up for you, and you can put in some of those terms and just see what the competition level is for those. Also, this is another good way to check is to Google a term that you are interested in ranking for, and just ask yourself if you can beat those pages or if you can compete with those pages. If you can't, it's probably not a great term to focus on. Also, this is just key in general, just a good piece of advice. Your web browser is personalized based on searches that you've previously done. So make sure that you're using an incognito window to avoid any kind of personalized search results when you're doing research on this level. So if you are searching for like something that's related to your business, you probably will pop up because you've been on your website previously. Okay, so back to being practical. So let's say that I search for sleeping bags. I am interested in maybe like creating a category, a product category page. I'm not sure how I want to break down my like broad idea of sleeping bags. So I pull this list, and what I want to do is I want to start identifying themes to put together into a short list. So I look at this list, I see cold weather sleeping bag, I see warm sleeping bags, I see winter sleeping bag. That's probably a great theme to start with. People are clearly searching around this topic, this idea, so whether that becomes a product category page or some kind of blog post of some kind, an area to focus on, this is like a good place to start. Keyword research definitely varies based on what your purpose is. So if you're doing it more for discovery, this is a good method. Otherwise, you can put in really specific terms if you are just doing keyword research for a specific page to figure out, you know, which term has the most search volume and which term should I use. Okay, so you have all that keyword research. You put together your themes or whatever. How do you apply that? What do you do with that information? There are some key elements that you should definitely optimize. Keyword research is great, again, for just informing the decisions that you're making and providing data for the content that you're creating. But you also want to make sure that you are optimizing your page title, your meta descriptions, your heading tags, and then your on-page content. So what pieces are those? This is a screenshot from a search engine result page for a sleeping bag. So the page title is that blue clickable link that you typically see. A page title should be unique and descriptive. It should be approximately 55 characters. So it's based on pixels. The character limit is actually a pixel limit. So what that means is if that title was in all caps, for example, it would maybe only fit 40 characters. Moz has a tool. This will be a clickable link if we'll send out this deck. So this will be a clickable link. So you can test the length of your titles. And the reason that that's important is if your page title is too long, it will have an ellipses at the end, so those 3 dots, which isn't the end of the world, but obviously the more that you can control what your users are seeing and control and impact the click-through rate on a search engine result page, the more impact you want to have, of course. So an example of just typically how we build page titles is, you know, keyword 1, maybe a second keyword if it fits, and then the brand name. We do the brand name last just because if it does get cut off on that search engine result page, then at least it's your brand getting cut off and the user is still getting the information that they're looking for, and they're more likely to click through on that term. And we use those bars instead of the dashes just because it's not as wide. So meta descriptions are this little blurb underneath the title and the URL. So there should be a click enticing, unique description of the page that they're clicking through to. Keep that within about 70 to 155 characters. Again, otherwise it'll result in this ellipses, which this particular example does have to deal with that. So again, you just want to make sure that you can, Google doesn't let you control a whole lot, so if you are able to have a little bit of input on what is showing up on the search engine result page, you should definitely take advantage of that. So this is the off-page elements. As for the on-page elements, you want to make sure that your heading tags are optimized. So this particular box here is an H1, which is the most important heading tag. You should only have one of these per page. A lot of people use these for style purposes, to make, you know, a heading bigger or bolder, but it actually does have significance. So make sure you only have one of these on each page. But there are multiple heading tags. You can have H2s, H3s, and so on. Those can be multiples. Just stick with the one heading tag. Make sure it's unique and descriptive of what is on that page. It's like, you know, the title for that page. And then I guess on that note, a heading tag is different than a page title, so just note that those two should be different and unique, but definitely related. Alt image text, you should tag your images with this text. Search engines can't see images, they only read text. So if you provide them with a description of what the image is, that helps them to better understand what image is on that page. So make sure it's descriptive and keyword rich. And then, of course, your page copy. This looks like just a little bit here. Ideally, you want to make sure that it's as descriptive as possible, and make sure that it's unique and keyword rich. To make sure that your page is really focused around, you know, maybe 2 to 4 keywords at most, a good test is to have someone else read the page, and if they can't describe the page in like a term or 2 terms, you maybe should revise your page and simplify it a little bit so that it's really focused, because the more focused it is, the more the search engine will understand what your page is about, and also what your user will understand what the page is about. All right, so you can call yourself an SEO now that you know how to do keyword research and how to apply it. So now let's take a little bit of a higher level strategic view of the content on your website. So you have your website structure, you know how to do the keyword research to get the data. Let's talk about content strategy and promotion of your content. First off, what is a content strategy? A content strategy is the idea of understanding who your user is, understanding what problems they have that you're able to solve, and then finding a way to solve those problems. So the first step here is to understand your user. Before you create any content, you want to make sure you understand who your user is. And that can be done by creating personas and understanding who your target audience is. These should be pretty specific. You don't need to create a persona for every possible customer that you might have, but definitely create, if you have multiple target audiences, just create like a handful of these so you really know who you're creating your content for. And get to know these people. You know, you don't want to just say we're targeting moms or we're targeting men, we're targeting kids. Let's get a little bit more specific than that so you can really understand who they are. Understand their interests, both things they like and things they dislike. You don't want to target the wrong people with the wrong types of content. Maybe their income range is important to you, probably their age range, their gender perhaps, different pain points that they're experiencing. So the more you don't need to get like crazy specific, like you don't have to know the audience members as well as you know your spouse, but you should know them probably as well as you know one of your friends. So in understanding those pain points, you also should understand for those users what their buying cycle is and what steps they take in the conversion process before they fully convert. And then once you have that information and you understand who the audience is, what steps they take, if you already have content created, you want to do something called a content inventory and a gap analysis. So this is identifying all the content that all the content assets that you have, whether they're online or offline, and then tying those to the personas and to the steps in the buying cycle, and then identifying areas that lack content and fill those gaps. Obviously, if this is like a new website and you don't have any content, that's maybe a different story, but this is a really good place to start, because if you've taken the time in the past to create some content assets or any kind of assets, why would you just push those aside? Definitely you can utilize those and reuse them where possible. So this is what this kind of looks like. A content inventory, this is how we do things here. If you search for this concept, I did not come up with this concept. So if you Google search for this, it will come up and it'll probably provide you with, you know, a little bit more insight here. But this is how we do things. It's actually pretty straightforward. It's just potentially time consuming and monotonous. But it's kind of fun to see what content you have on your website. So you can pull a list of all the URLs on your site, and then you want to take a look at each of those and put them into, or tie them to, a persona and then also a step in the buying cycle. So whatever purpose that piece of content is serving, you want to identify those places. If it's not serving a purpose, if it's not relevant to any of your personas, if it's not really doing anything for any of the steps in the buying cycle, you can go ahead and take that off your site because it's probably not worth having on your site. So once you've put everything into this document, then you can go ahead and just quantify that. So this is totally just an example here of, you know, these different types of campers and the steps in the buying cycle. And then you can see, like, oh, consideration doesn't have a ton of content. Purchase intent for the casual camper, we're really lacking content there. The extreme camper and the interest phase is like really lacking content. So we probably want to beef up the content in those areas to make sure that we're serving all of our target audience and that we're hitting them at each step of the buying cycle. But of course, you know, not all personas or steps are created equal. So just make sure that you're prioritizing accordingly and generating content accordingly. Okay, here we go. Blogging and content calendar creation. So blogging is, a lot of people, it's their answer to SEO, it's their answer to content, but it's not necessarily for everyone. So you want to make sure that you're creating the right type of content for your audience. So whether that is a blog or a video or a product or service page, some kind of graphic, a tool of some kind, don't just create a blog for the sake of creating new content. You could instead put a lot of that effort maybe into an awesome video or an awesome graphic, something that's more relevant for your audience. But you should consider a blog if you have an actively engaged community or the potential for one, you have the resources to commit to regular content creation, and if you have something great to say. A blog really can be an awesome way to engage with your community and provide them with regular and useful content. It's important, though, that you plan out the content that you are going to be creating. This, of course, should be informed by keyword research. So regardless of if it's blog posts or videos, just create a roadmap of what content you're creating and when, so that also you know, like, which resources you have at that time, to just make sure that things will be regularly created and distributed. So content calendars, there's a ton of resources for these out on the web. Again, just do some kind of search for content calendar and find the one that best fits your needs. Here's another example of what that looks like. But the more organized you can be, the more likely it is that you will regularly be creating content for your users, which is good. Content promotion. This, I think I have done this plenty of times, and we all kind of end up doing this. We spend all this time putting in great research as to what types of content we should create, and then we actually create the content, and that takes a bunch of time. And then we just publish it and don't really do anything about it, and don't really think about how people are going to get to that content. So it's like that whole tree in the woods thing. Hello, can anybody hear me? So you definitely want to make sure that content promotion and distribution is factored into your content strategy and your content creation strategy. So whether that's on social media, pay-per-click, which is paid advertising, newsletters or email, whatever medium it is that your users best interact with, that's where you want to reach them. I mean, nobody's going to like come to your website expecting to see new blog content. If you can create that environment, that is awesome, but that is definitely something that takes time and a special brand. So on that same note, make sure that you are, again, just choosing those right mediums for your audience. So this is an article that is on REI's website, on their blog, and they promote it on Facebook, they promote it on Twitter, they don't do anything about it on Pinterest, but they have like a ton of really great, like camping hacks and product offerings on their Pinterest, so they understand what people are searching for and what people are looking for in different mediums, and they're understanding how to approach them. And this, like, it wouldn't make sense to promote this article using a paid pay-per-click ad, just because it's more about engaging with their community. So they understand the type of content that they've created and then how to promote it in the most effective way. All right, so wow, we covered so much today. So that there is content strategy. Let's just go over really quick. So we talked about website organization, talked about keyword research, and we talked about content strategy. This feels like a lot, but it actually sort of is just scratching the surface of what content is and can be for your business. Again, I just want to return to the SEO pyramid, because this is what we really focus on here, is making sure that we have a website foundation that everything, all the great content that you create can be found easily. So the SEO 101 webinar is on our blog. This will be coming up soon. And then I guess just one last thing is, this is not a set it and forget it kind of a thing. This is always how can we be improving things, how can we be optimizing things as search engines change, as users change, how can we be providing the best product for our users ultimately. We always talk about search engines, but it's also for the user. So with that, I will see if Taylor has any questions.
Wonderful. So first off, thanks, Chrissy, for leading today's webinar. So I'll give everybody here a chance to type in some questions. Please let us know if you have them. And while you're entering your questions, I'll take a quick second to make a second announcement here. I'll send out a link that will offer Chrissy and her team to provide a free SEO scan for the first 25 qualified companies that are interested in it. So we'll send that link out tomorrow in email, so you'll have the opportunity to have your website scanned to see how you perform against some of your competitors. Also, as Chrissy mentioned, this is the second webinar in our series. If you missed the previous SEO 101 webinar, we'll also be sharing a link to that as well. It looks like we do have a couple questions. One question that came up a little bit earlier on was, when you're talking about building URLs, are there any tools out there to help you build an effective URL, or to test if your URL will be picked up by a search engine?
I mean, it'll definitely be picked up if you're, creating a new site. I'm not sure about building. Like, we typically just use Excel and then use an Excel formula to combine some of these. As if you're creating like thousands of URLs, obviously you don't want to manually write all of those. I'm not sure if there's any I don't want to misspeak and say that there is if there isn't, but I would imagine if you personally are building the site, if you did a Google search for URL builder, it would probably be able to help you out there.
Cool. So another question that came up is, I know searches have a lot of local components to it. Are there tools out there that will allow you to search virtually from another geolocation?
Allow you to search? I know that there is a way that, I believe there is a way that you can change your location in, the browser itself. Otherwise, if you're wondering like what a search result would look like in that local location, I'm not sure. I think that would have to be done on your browser in the back end. Otherwise, again, like I said, you can, if you're doing keyword research for a specific location, you can change that location to make sure that the location targeting is to that specific area.
Sure, thanks. Can you tell us how creating content for buying cycles is different? So it sounds like if somebody was in the discovery phase versus the conversion phase, how might creating content be different for those?
Sure, definitely. So it really just it starts out pretty generic, like if you're in the discovery phase or the awareness phase, that's going to be pretty generic. So things to consider is people are searching different, this is how I usually consider it anyway, is people are searching for different things based on what step they are at in the buying cycle. So if they're searching for like sleeping bags, they are looking for something pretty generic. So that would be if this was like a blog post or something, it would be like comparing different types of sleeping bags. And then if somebody was ready to purchase, it would maybe be a more specific search, like even potentially a branded search like REI adult purple sleeping bag. I just always use that example, I guess. And then there's also like the follow-up stage, so that would maybe be content such as how to care for my sleeping bag, or how to fix the zipper if it rips, something along those lines. So I mean, just as you as a user go through different steps in the buying cycle, you're obviously looking for different things in those areas, so it's important to meet the user at those different steps.
Great. So this is one that I've seen a few other places too. How important is it to include my brand name when doing keyword research? So it sounds like, should I be including that within my strategy, my brand name?
When you're doing the actual keyword research, I mean, it's maybe just interesting to know, but ultimately I mean, brand is really important, but you should be winning those searches. So for example, if somebody's searching for REI sleeping bag, REI's page will show up because that is what people are searching for. It's more of those generic searches that you want to win over the competition. You should be ranking for your brand if people are searching for your brand. Now, again, I'm using that REI example. They're a big brand, so if you're a smaller brand, or maybe you have a more generic brand name, that can get a little bit trickier, but it's really not necessary when you're doing the keyword research to factor in your brand. If you're tracking terms, you can definitely track some branded terms just to keep an eye on where you're at. But again, like I said, you want to focus on those non-branded, more generic terms to win those from the competition.
So we have two questions I'm going to try to combine into one question. So what's the difference between an H1 and an H2 tag? So, and I'll combine it with, does having more than one heading tag hurt my SEO?
Yes. Okay. So heading tags, an H1 is similar to a page title in importance and level of importance. So if you have two H1s, it's kind of confusing to the search engine as to what is the most important on your page, because that's really what it's telling it. If you create multiples, what was the question about the H2s?
What's the difference?
What's the difference? So again, it is just significance. Heading tags indicate hierarchy of importance on your site. So the H1 is the most important. Again, it's like we can't control much of how search engines interact and how search engines make decisions. So the more we can kind of nudge them in the right direction, the better. So you want to make sure that you are just wisely choosing which H1 you want to use. But like I said, you can have multiple H2s. But you just really want to focus that page down to the one.
Great. So this is a little bit of a longer question that's been entered. I'm going to try to see if I can track with it. So I work for a multi-campus school within the university. Our school spans 2 campuses and has 2 websites, each using a different top-level domain. How can I diminish the impact using multiple top-level domains? Due to administrative reasons, we cannot consolidate the top-level domains right now. So a little bit of a longer question. I can repeat it if you need to, but it sounds like they have 2 top-level domains, and they're wondering what the penalty might be.
Sure, that's definitely tricky because especially if it's like has the same name, I guess. But if you do have different offerings, which I would maybe guess or I would hope, you can certainly optimize for those. So optimize for like if one campus offers business versus, um, health or something like that, I would probably focus on that. Um, and then just try to differentiate as much as possible. I don't, I obviously understand that there's always governance at businesses that make things difficult from a web perspective. But if you can differentiate by this campus versus this campus, I would do that as much as possible. But yeah, I would just differentiate as much as humanly possible those deeper pages, and then if the homepage has to be similar and targeting similar terms, then I guess you just have to deal with that.
Sounds like a complicated process here, but hopefully that helps them make it a little bit more simple. So I like this question quite a bit. So it is with visual content. So visual content is becoming more and more important and more heavily used. So stuff like infographics and videos, how do they work with SEO?
So you can tag things in certain ways, or add things to certain things to make them more SEO friendly. So I would say for infographics, if you can, like typically those will somehow be tied into some relevant information, whether it's a blog post or something related, something that's a little bit more text heavy, just to better explain or better help search engines understand. But again, so for infographics, I would definitely use that alt image tag to make sure that that's tagged in a descriptive way. For videos, you want to make sure, I would say the most popular are obviously YouTube and Vimeo for hosting videos. Make sure that your titles for the videos are optimized. You can optimize those like you'd optimize a page title. Optimize that description like you'd optimize a meta description. And then if you have the capacity to create transcripts for the videos, that is a great way to really just utilize your video to the best of its ability. That's a really popular way. And then if somebody doesn't want to watch the video and they just want to read the transcript, or they maybe want to check back for reference, that's also a useful way to do it. Moz is a great example. They do these Whiteboard Friday videos, and they transcribe all of their videos into like blog posts with graphics. So just utilize, obviously, like videos and graphics are great for user experience, so utilize those in the best SEO way as possible by just optimizing those where you can.
All right, we've got a couple more, and we have time for a couple more here. There is a little bit longer one that I'm going to try to process before I ask you. But now a different one that came up a little earlier is you talked about internal links. And so is the process of internal links, is that more just the structure of a website, or will the quantity of internal links on your website have an impact on SEO?
Well, so you definitely don't want to be spammy with internal linking or any kind of linking. So internal linking is important from a navigational get from point A to point B perspective, but you can also interlink within body text if that's appropriate. But you don't, like, search engines are smart, so they understand if you're kind of gaming the system. So they don't like when you try to overly link to try to make one page seem more important than the other. So just link where it's logical, link where it makes sense. Ultimately, search engines want the user to have the best experiences possible. So always keep the user in mind and always just try to create the best possible experience for them. And then most likely you will also please the search engines in that process.
Wonderful. So I think we have time for one more, and I figured out how I'd like to ask this last one. So this person, they work for an online printing company, and it looks like they do international business because they have a URL/business cards. And it sounds like Brazilian people search the word Brazilian, or search the word business card way more often than business cards, the plural. So they're planning to create a page that is slash business card as well as business cards. Is there any risk of that being viewed as duplicate content from Google, or being penalized for having two pages that provide the same product or a very similar product with just a letter difference in the URL?
Sure. Well, it definitely depends on the actual content itself. I mean, if it's completely different, then that's one story. Also, if it's a specific page that's being served in Brazil, then that's not an issue. I mean, this brings up a whole issue of international SEO. So it depends if it's just a US page that is also just, business cards versus business card. So that's kind of a tricky question. Again, though, if it's, business card and then business cards, those are two separate URLs. As long as all the content is different, it won't be viewed as duplicate content. But again, depending on where it's served, whether it's US and Brazil or just Brazil, that would make a difference there. So hopefully that didn't make it more confusing than anything.
So I think we'd have time just for this. So somebody did put in the comment field on that with redirects. Would that be a way of possibly solving that problem using URL redirect?
I'm not entirely sure what they're getting at with that one. I mean, if they're two live pages that live on the site, I'm not like an international SEO expert, so I would assume that there's like some kind of variation there. But if they're two live pages, it would still potentially be an issue. That's all I have on that one.
Wonderful. And with that, I think that's all we have time for. So thank you again for presenting today. I really enjoyed the presentation. For everybody who attended today, thank you so much. We'll be sending out an email tomorrow that has the link to this recorded presentation along with a handful of other resources. We hope that you'll take Chrissy and her team up on their offer to provide an SEO scan for you and your organization. So Chrissy, thank you again for your time.
Awesome. Yeah, find me on Twitter if you have any more questions. Thanks.